Hello. Today I'd like to ask and also answer what I think is a very important question for ambitious amateurs out there trying to change their golf swings. Because I would like to ask you how you're going to change a three-dimensional movement with two-dimensional feedback. I think I have one of the best technical studios out there. I'm working with Trapman, I'm working with high-speed cameras. I can watch every movement in slow motion, but it's always in two dimensions. I'm helped, obviously, because I have Trapman numbers out there, so I can actually see if the player has come from out to in to out, if they're hitting in the downswing, in the upswing. And you would think maybe that's enough, but it really isn't. And what I've actually found is that there is still an awful lot of misinterpretation of information that you are receiving when you're trying to make a change, because you simply aren't able to interpret this information on a three-dimensional level. Let me show you what I mean. When you make a backswing, you are looking at this movement and you're probably just seeing this so-called one-piece takeaway. The trouble is it really? When you actually look at the way that I am moving, I am turning my shoulders, I'm turning my hips, I am lifting my arms, I'm hinging and rotating my wrists. Can you see all that with this two-dimensional front picture? Once we get to the side, of course, when you look at my golf swing, you might be able to see better how the arms are being lifted in front of my body and the club is maybe changing its plane during the golf swing. But even looking into the video there, I tend to look at things in lines. And I know you'll see, if you've ever had a golf lesson with video, that the instructors like to kind of paint lines and circles onto the video so that they can better see how your arms and hands are moving. But unfortunately for you, if you're not as used to working with this, it's difficult to interpret what changes you have to make to get your club on a better line. And if we're honest, there are no lines. The golf club is never moving down a straight line. It's always moving in curves. And this is one of the reasons that I've been looking for some kind of device to help me get that feedback. Now, obviously, if you go into a studio with $40,000, $50,000 worth of equipment, which is motion analyzing your movement, you are probably going to be in some kind of a studio environment at least, and if at best, you'll be hitting into a net. Getting on a driving range and seeing 3D feedback is very, very difficult and extremely expensive. But fortunately, there is now a solution to the problem, and it's called Hack Motion. I talked about it last year. I've been working with this company and with this device for about 18 months now. And this is the only device really that a normal hobby golfer can really strap on and in 2 minutes actually get three-dimensional feedback of what is happening in their swing. Now, I know it's only measuring what's happening with the wrists and the hands, but quite honestly, that's the most important data. And whatever your hip rotation, your shoulder rotation, your arm rotation, or your hand and wrist rotation is doing, it's all going to be shown in the Hack Motion, because what's happening with the golf club is the most important thing. It's the golf club that you're swinging. So over the next few weeks, I want to explain to you better how the Hack Motion is actually showing you what's happening in the golf swing and why that's important. Also, how that actually compares to what you're seeing in the video image. So today I'm going to talk primarily about the flexion and extension of your lead wrist in the swing, and how that actually is influenced in your golf swing by what your hips are doing, what your shoulders are doing, what your arms are doing. And to a certain extent, it's also guiding your hips, your arms, and your shoulders, because it's allowing you to get more rotation into your golf swing or less rotation into your golf swing, dependent on your wrist position during the swing. And if there is anything that I feel has been missing, especially in the amateur golfer's repertoire, it's the movement of their wrists. An awful lot, if not the majority of amateur golfers are blocking wrist movement because it gives them the feeling of losing control of the club head. If you're honest and look at the actual movement of your wrists, when you rotate your wrist, if you keep a stable lead elbow, you don't allow the elbow to rotate with the wrist, you will actually find there is very limited rotational movement available to the club because your lower arm simply can't move without your upper arm. And by keeping this movement within the control, by just controlling one joint to a certain extent, obviously the shoulder joint is also being controlled, then you can actually let the club swing without any fear of losing control of it. Let me show you what I mean. When I make a swing here and look at the data on the hat motion, you're going to see a wonderful kind of curve in the graph, which is showing you exactly what my wrist is doing during the swing. If we compare that to the information that the high-speed camera is giving us, you can see very little of what my wrist is doing on the high-speed camera. We can maybe say, okay, at the top of the swing, the wrist should be straight, but if it starts out bent, how does it get straight to the top of the backswing? And what movements do you have to do to make it straight? And this is really what I'm talking about. If you look at the graph, you can actually see in my swing, the wrist is actually going back into extension at the top of the swing. That means it is starting with a bit of extension. As I rotate and lift the club, it does straighten and even goes into a bit of flexion. But as I relax at the top of the swing, the wrist goes into extension again. And only as I start to drop the club, and especially when the arms are stop dropping and the club starts to drop, that's when the extension is happening. If we stop at that point in the video, there's no chance of seeing it. The club, of course, is not back here in the video because I'm rotating my body at the same time. I can only rotate my body towards the target as much as the club is actually bent away from the target, because otherwise I'm coming from the outside. So I'm going to be rotating dependent on how much flexion and rotation I have in my wrists and hands. And these things, you just can't see them. In fact, if you look at some of the analysis of hat motion, you will actually see different types of graphs depending on swing types. In fact, there's a guy called Cox, spelt C-O-W-X, so I hope that's the right way of pronouncing it, who's actually developed kind of three basic swing types. What he would probably say is a classic type, which actually holds a little bit longer the extension in the backswing and then basically allows the club to go in, or the wrist to go into flexion, the club to kind of drop behind him. And then you'd have your kind of John Rahm and Dustin Johnson, which go straight into flexion in the backswing, and you get this kind of hooded club at the top of the backswing, and you think, how are they going to hit that? But what they do then is they get massive amounts of rotation in order to get into this very strong position at impact. whatever way you're swinging the golf club, the question is it working for you? Are you getting the club square on the ball? If you're going in with a lot of flexion, you're going to have a lot of rotation. Do you have the mobility to do that? I have personally found that the swing type for me, which is a bit strange because I'm not a long hitter, but this profession is basically saying is more of a kind of a pattern for a long hitter. I know as an older golfer now that I am using everything in my arsenal to actually move the golf ball further. And one of the things that I am trying to do is get my wrists working quicker and more efficiently through impact. And I think that's something I can recommend for you to do. And again, if you look at the graphs, you can see how as I come down through impact, there's an awful lot of movement from flexion into extension, which is speeding this golf club up and whizzing it down the target line and allowing me to actually generate very good club head speed, although I'm a bit of an old geezer now. Not visible on two-dimensional video, irrespective of the frame rate. And this is really what I'm trying to get over to you, that this is all very difficult to measure, but if you get the right feedback using a device like the hat motion, then you have a chance of actually seeing from swing to swing in real time, how did you do there? And is this graph starting to repeat? Are you starting to see similar movements with every swing that you make? And if you are, then you know you're starting to groove it. Make a few swings without thinking about what you're doing with your wrists. Is it the same? So what should you be doing with your wrists? Well, again, if we just take this extension and flexion, what we want to be doing as we start the swing is picking the club up, hinging the wrists up, and rotating the club at the same time without allowing this lead elbow to rotate with the swing. That way, when I do this, there is a limit to the angle that I can create with the shaft. I don't want the shaft back here parallel to the ground. On the other hand, I don't want it too steeply. If I go back with a lot of extension, it's going to be steep and I'm going to get a real kind of droop there in the backswing. I know it's something that you see in a lot of players. Tony Finau is a good example of this. But a more neutral swing, and also one which will help you to actually get passive in your backswing more quickly, will be a swing where you're quite active at the bottom of your swing up to chest height, lifting and rotating the club, keeping that lead elbow pointing down to the ground. And then you can go passive on it because you've given the club so much momentum, it's going to pull your arms up by itself. And as gravity starts to win, the arms will come down as well by themselves. This is when you start to relax your body and allow your hips and shoulders to start to return to their starting positions. And your arms to drop. As the club drops, your wrist will then go into flexion. And you can see on the graph how this actually happens. And as you get down to what we all know is this release position, kind of parallel to the ground with the club head starting more or less to come back and rotate back towards the ball, we can then release and extend through the ball, allowing the wrist to almost feeling as if it's flipping. But because you've rotated so late and so actively, the pulling of the shoulder will actually keep a lot of lean on the golf club at impact. And again, if you look at the graph curve, you can see that although my wrist is moving extremely quickly into extension, at the moment at impact, it is not yet in extension. But I can't block that movement, otherwise I'm losing club head speed. I'm going to talk about this in more detail in the coming videos. So if you like it, please subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to be really kind of going into depth about not only what you want to be doing, but how you want to be doing this. Today was more of a kind of a shout out to you that you want to go out and, if you can, get one of these devices. There are 3 packages on the market at the moment. One with just flexion and extension, a kind of a mid-range where you'll get able to do some putting work, and then you have the professional version. To be perfectly honest, you need the professional version if you're going to work 3-dimensionally with your golf swing. There's no way to get around it. But at around about $1,000 normally, and I think you can get anything up to a 20% discount. I shall leave a code below. Not necessary to guarantee you that discount, but if you're coming in the kind of November time before Christmas, I'm sure we can do something for you, or Hack Motion can do something for you. Click on the code, it will take you to the website, and you can start working on your golf swing straight away. Hope you liked it. If you did, smash that like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you to all of my patrons. I shall leave a link below if you'd like to become a patron to the channel. Until the next time, goodbye.